basically, the story of the women tech makers and of the GDG cloud in Nuremberg goes kind of all the way down to me and Karen, because we ended up meeting at a meetup of the GDGs in Nuremberg. Back then, I was the regional lead for developer relations community programs at Google. And I'm from Franconia. I was born in Schweinfurt, which is not too far from where you all are. I can speak Franconian if you want to test me on that, or the German native speakers. My lower Franconian is really, really well developed. For the last 15 years or so, my parents have been based in Würzburg. I lived abroad, and then in Munich, and then now I live in Berlin. So having this opportunity, this virtual call to connect with all of you is amazing, because for me, like, you are part of my old home, or the home of my heart, I should say. And yeah, I was on holiday actually, and I was visiting my mother, and as I basically said, let's have a GDG meetup, let's go there. And then there were a couple of people, we had great time, and Karen was there too. We ended up chatting, and then he drove me to the main station so I could go back. And then he was like, yeah, there's no GDG cloud in Nuremberg, we should start one. And that's how it all started. And here we are, almost 1 year later. It's almost it's like, I think 10 and a half, 11 months now later. And now we have the Women Tech Makers group as well, which of course you originated sort of out of this let's say further bubble, which is really cool to see. So happy to be on board. And yeah, that was sort of the story of how Karen and I got to know each other and how I came to be here. But let's talk about networking today. So networking one-on-one, your personal community. Why am I qualified to talk about this? I will tell you in a minute. Just a couple of words generally. And by the way, can everybody who's not speaking please mute themselves? I have some background noise. That would be nice. Thank you. So as you know, my name is Franziska Hauck, as you probably saw on the meetup. I am a people leader in engineering. What does that mean? I manage currently 3 IT teams, 22 people in total, but I'm not managing them from a technical perspective. I have always worked in tech since starting my career, but I'm not technical, as they say. I'm not a programmer. I did do some PO tasks further back. I used to be a community manager for a long time. And then my last station before my current station was at Google, as I said, in the developer relations team for the community programs. And now I have the honor of managing 3 IT teams with everything that comes with that. I'm also a freelance consultant. I consult in DevRel, in community and recruiting, and most recently also in accessibility. I am also a disability and chronic illness advocate, because I live with chronic illnesses, illnesses that are not well researched, so we don't know a lot about them. There is no cure, no treatment. So I'm a bit sort of, I'm trying to advocate as much as I can for the likes of us, and to make sure that we are well represented, we have good opportunities in the workplace, and so forth. I also became co-organizer of the accessibility group here in Berlin. So we've been organizing a couple of meetups there, most recently a meetup on neurodiversity, where we had the story with the trolls, as Denise was just mentioning, where we had been interrupted by trolls. So you see, I have sort of the challenges and the good moments and the bad moments of an organizer as well. So why do I talk about networking in a general sense? I talk about a lot of topics. I speak regularly at meetups, but networking is actually one thing that's really near and dear to my heart. I have a background in basically very, very basic working class environment. My family networking was not a concept for them. And for a long time, until my mid-20s, I didn't do it. I just went about my business, went about my daily life. And then through community management mainly, and the community manager circle, I discovered the power of networking. And ever since then, I've built up my network very, very strategically with a lot of fun. That's the joy of it. You have to have fun. To the point where now people, and specifically Martina Kraus, I always like to quote her on that, says, whenever there is something, ask Franziska, because she can always recommend someone. If it pertains to tech, there is a very, very high likelihood that I know I'm great. So we are being recorded again. Currently, what I also do is I study mostly developer insights for Germany. So if you have any questions on developers, on tech people, job market, preferred languages, ages, and so forth, you can also come to me. I'd be happy to answer your questions. So to get started, I want to have sort of a 10-minute silent brainstorming, but it won't be silent forever. You will also present afterwards. What are the advantages of having a good network? Please take 10 minutes to note down your points. And then afterwards we will present. And when we present, I would like you to introduce yourself with your name and what you do, and then note basically points to us. From now, so we will get back to talking at about 19:25. So yeah, just to summarize it, and all of your answers basically mirrored what I also the conclusion that I have come to is what I call the 3 S's. It's support. So if you have a network, you can get support in times of need. You can be provided with help anytime. I've had lots and lots of examples. One of the most recent examples was when I was looking for a job. And I had this huge community, GDG community behind me, and they forwarded my CV. They actually recommended me to their employers. They recommended me to other people. And actually the job at Signavio that I have currently came out because of the network, because I had posted on LinkedIn, and then there was a contact of my new colleague that I have now. He saw my post, he commented on it, we had a call, and the rest is history. Synergies, finding the right fit. So oftentimes in the network, you have people that are working on similar things or want to achieve the same things as you, and just finding them and creating that together, that's really good. I've seen whole businesses being created out of this, out of network. And just sometimes just the moral support that you get, that, oh yeah, this person is also dealing with that. Denise, when you mentioned chronic illness, like, especially in tech, my chronic illness network, I call it somehow a subverted network, because not a lot of people live openly with chronic illnesses and disabilities, at least not when they're not visible. It's like you instantly recognize each other, and you recognize the struggle, and you have an instant kinship. And that's what I really, really like, especially about tech, because there are a lot of people with chronic illnesses and disabilities that work in tech, even though it doesn't look like it. Sync. You can sync, you can get feedback anytime. When I did my presentation for my ally talk, it was just, I was like, okay, I have slides, but are they actually good? I reached out to people, 3 people immediately said, yes, I will check your slides. So I got immediate opportunity to sync with them and to align it, as Vlad said, 4 IC more than 2. And I was able to create a good presentation out of it and take on their input. There's oftentimes this question of, when it comes to networking, basically the overwhelming point is that let's have a small qualitative network. It's much, much better. You still know people, and it's not just like you have sort of tons of followers on Instagram or whatnot. When it comes to that question, I'm a bit torn, because my network has been steadily growing. And I'm at a point where I can still remember names, where I can still sort of connect them to stories or experiences that we had together. So when it comes to small versus large, I don't think there's a general recommendation. Whatever works best for you. So if you're aiming to have a huge network because you maybe need it for your business, or maybe because the one thing that you want to achieve is connected to a large network, or is connected to a success that is only enabled by a large network, go for it, do it. If you're more of the person, maybe you are introverted and you don't enjoy interacting with a big bunch of people, then small and qualitative is much better for you. But at the end of the day, I still feel that even with a large network, you can have a qualitative network and qualitative relationships. It's always about, ask yourself how you got to know the person. What kind of shared experiences and stories do you have with that person? And how does that translate? How does that transcend to what you're actually doing now, and how you can basically go forward together? So when it comes to the question of creating network, how does that all work? In the beginning of the call, I said, I don't have any magic formula, and I don't. It's not like, do this and you will be fine. But what I have done is basically set up a collection of things that you can do, and maybe think about incorporating networking into every aspect of what you do. And thus, by leaps and bounds, create your own network and design it the way you want it to be. So starting out, the most basic aspect you can do is looking around and looking at your colleagues and peers. Especially, At the workplace, I mean, I have a CV. I've actually changed workplaces quite a bit, and it has helped me because I've met a lot of people through that. And what it helps you is basically it helps you discover people, because the people just sitting around in your team, or maybe, you know, people in another department, you go out on maybe an activity day, or you do a diversity training together. Great. Latch onto that, find the synergies, find the similarities on the things that are mutually exchange for both of you. So it could be a shared interest, it could be something that you both want to achieve, it could be that you're working on a project together. Great source for network. And what always is interesting and good to know is it's not just the network that you create for yourself. With every contact that you have immediately access to their network as well. Imagine that. So everybody brings their own network basically to the table. And if you already exchange with them, then maybe they even have a recommendation for something that you are looking for in their network. So you have immediately this unlocking effect. That, by the way, goes also for uni or anything that you are currently attending or following. What I also find interesting are former peers. So we all, you know, maybe we are at an event, at a meetup, and then we bump into that person. Oh yeah, I remember you. You were, you know, working in that department, and we know each other through this and that. Former peers are a great source for networking. Oftentimes, after a couple of years, you discover topics that are still, new topics that come up and that you now share. I've had a couple of examples where I met up with people that, I'm going to be completely honest with you, I couldn't stand when I first worked together with them. And then a couple of years later, it turns out that, oh, they're working on this, and you share this and that. And it's just great. Let's connect, let's stay in touch. And they actually became really good friends of mine at the end of the day. So sometimes it's just the perspective that we have. And just because you have sort of former history with someone does not mean that you cannot see them in a new light. And again, it's their network that's also beneficial and that you can unlock at that point. Always try to be in those exchanges, try to be open, try to be sharing what you're working on. Transparency is key here. So the more you can actually identify what you are looking for and what you're looking for input for, the greater it is, or the better it is. The classic is sort of the meetups and conference realm. And when we look towards, mostly this happens in person, right? And I call this cold approaching. Whenever we are at a meetup or a conference, maybe not in these Corona times, but when we all have the chance to get back to being together in person and sharing topics in person, oftentimes you have sort of an experience where there's a speaker and you still have questions afterwards. So you wait around and then you approach them and you ask your questions. Where oftentimes I had situations where I was standing in the queue to get food or to get drinks, and the person behind me and before me, I was bored and I started chatting with them. It turns out they have something in common with me. We end up, you know, connecting on LinkedIn or on Twitter and whatnot. I even did it on the plane to San Francisco once. There was a guy next to me, and he had a group in Leipzig about, I think it was Java. And we started chatting, and I was like, oh yeah, so I work at Google and I take care of the community programs. And then we ended up just talking for 3 hours and connecting afterwards. So not just meetups and conferences, planes apparently too. The good thing is with meetups and conferences, you already have a social setting that helps you. So you have a setting where it's encouraged to approach each other, where you have a good reason to approach other people. I know that for especially introverted people, this can be a bit challenging at times to be like, oh, hey, here I am. Get to know me. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. And even for introverted people, there are ways and means to do it. I've exchanged with a lot. I myself, I'm ambiverted, so I see both sides. And especially when I have my introverted phases, there's nothing more that I want to do and go into like a quiet room somewhere off. Guess what? The quiet room, there are also people. So sometimes I've had, I think at the Dev Fest in Berlin in last November, I had the most amazing chat with another speaker in the speaker room. It was just him and me. And we talked about chronic illness and the fact that he started a running group for diabetic people where he lived in the US. And they had sort of this pledge that they only talked about non-diabetes stuff when they did their walking group. But they all had diabetes, so they shared that in common. Also very effective, right? Have sort of a shared connection, but you don't necessarily need to talk about it. And then oftentimes at community meetups, at conferences, you have a shared activity, just like this workshop. We are doing something together. And that's usually a really good icebreaker to go out and be like, hey, I'm doing this funny thing with you. Let's, talk about other stuff as well. And then you connect over that and you bond over that. What I find a really, 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 really good source for networking is speaking yourself. I'm looking at a lot of female faces, or at least people I read as female. If I misgender you, then please, I'm sorry, but I hope I do gender you correctly. Do it. Go out there, speak as much as you can on your topics. There are a lot of men, especially at tech meetups, tech conferences, which is fine. We all like men. We all like humanity, but there are too many percentage-wise. So it's just a fact. It's a fact. I've had situations where it was like, oh, Franziska, you are a woman. We need a woman. Can you speak? And I was like, yes, take me. I will do it. Do I have anything against being the quota woman? Absolutely not. As long as I'm sort of half decently able to say something about the topic, I will speak. And I will actually acquire expertise via that as well. It's interesting. So speaking is a very proactive way of introducing yourself. You have the opportunity to control your public persona, your public brand. You have the opportunity to control the content that you want to be associated with and that people approach you about. And again, it comes down to personal branding in a way. It's whether you do that on social media or in the speaker role, it's up to you. You can brand yourself. You can have colorful slides. You can have very, very sort of structured slides. You can have any topic that you feel confident about and that you can talk about from a professional or even from a private point of view. My whole aspect of chronic illness and disability advocacy came from the fact that I had repeated, frustrated interactions with my manager. And I was super motivated to be like, no, it can't be like that. It doesn't work like that. I have to change it. And I was frustrated. I wanted to change it. And I actually started speaking and talking to people. And the more I talked to people and the more they got to, they associated me with that topic, the more I got invitations for podcasts, speaking engagements, and so forth. So it's the kind of thing that multiplies, right? Once you have that persona, you are up on stage, people recognize you, you are known, and you will have an effect that I've had about 3 or 4 years into my networking. People came up to me and they were like, Franziska Hauck, I've heard the name before. And I was like, yes. Internally, I was like so joyful. They know me, they recognize my name, and I danced through the day all day long. It was fun. But it was like a confirmation of my public branding actually worked. So speak as much as you can. And the men on this call too, I didn't want to exclude you, but the women do it twice more than the men, just as a general rule. You cannot go wrong with that. Courses and trainings. We are all, whether it's science or tech, we are all in an area where we probably are very proactive knowledge seekers, right? So courses and trainings provide a very good forum for that. Again, with the learning, you have a shared aim and agenda. This is great. You probably will have some shared experiences. Last November, I did a project management certification, and there were people from all walks of life, like seriously, people that I probably would have never gotten in touch with. I ended up connecting with them on Xing and LinkedIn and so forth. And it's just great because now my timeline is a bit more diverse in a way. But at the end of the day, we all had the aim, we all had the agenda of doing great projects and to steer that well through the company. And it helps you also to basically focus on what kind of networking you want to enable there because of that topic. If you're already taking a course, it's probably something you're interested in, probably something that you want to build up networking on. And the follow-up after is very important with these kind of things because we get together like once or we get together over a certain period of time. And sometimes it's not enough sort of to say, okay, let's connect and let's stay connected through our channels, but actually try to, even just after 2-3 months, maybe there's something that reminds you of that person, then reach out, get in touch. And then I see people smiling, so there's something in the chat that's going on. I hope I'm not missing anything. If there's any question, just shout out because otherwise I won't see it. Maria says you met Karl and Vlad during a Google Cloud course. You were seated between them. Great. Sandwich technique. That's how they do it. Divide and conquer. Yeah, absolutely. I've seen them in action. That works really well for them. Uh, actually, I sometimes I did that too. Do you know those things where you're like, you do a course and you're the only person on the course, you don't have anyone with you, and you're just standing there awkwardly in the corner. It's like, oh my God, what am I doing here? And I just like, oh, there is a seat. And then you have sort of this whole line of, this is the only seat that was free. And all of a sudden you start a conversation with the person. Great. Works every single time. Highly recommendable. Social and community. I don't have to tell you specifically because we all kind of, I wouldn't say grew up with social media, because I would at least consider myself too old to be able to say I grew up with it. But at least I've had it starting in my youth, kind of in my 20s. And so social and communities, very, very good tools, very good vehicles to network. But it all depends on your proactiveness. You probably have heard of all these things of, I get these weird LinkedIn connection requests. Should I accept them? My general advice is do. What do you have to lose? In the worst case scenario, you can still block people. Of course, don't accept any spammy looking profiles and whatnot, but sometimes just, I recently did a survey for engineering managers, and I was like, do I know any engineering managers? And I looked on LinkedIn, typed in engineering manager, and I ended up having like 30 people in my network that were engineering managers. I had that in that title. I was like, yay, I have a network. And it just happened sort of naturally because, again, having been at Google, being at these meetups, and then people just send you a connection request. Again, that comes with more knowledge of your name, wherever you are moving or in which circles you're moving, but also just generally because your profile is just generally getting noticed because you have more contacts, it's growing and so forth. So think about that. Sometimes it's really, really good. But the flip side of that is also think about reaching out to people from your side proactively. You have the opportunity to reach out to them and to connect with them. Like 20, 30 years ago, you used to have cards, and then you gave each other cards, and then you had like these little wheels where you had all the cards stored, and then you pick one of them out, and then you dial the number, and it was just very, very inefficient. Nowadays, you can, with any channel you have, whether it's Xing, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, maybe some of you are into that, absolutely fine, TikTok, connect with people on TikTok if necessary. Some of you have small children, maybe some have children in that age group. So any channel is fine, as long as you have the opportunity to stay in touch and to be able to just pick that up again whenever it becomes necessary or apparent. Again, also personal branding. If you talk about speaker roles and being on a stage and sort of sharing your story, you can do that online so much more nicely even. You control your whole spiel, your whole agenda, the content that you post. You can decide to be a curator. You can decide to be sharing knowledge that you find that comes across in your path. You can, sorry, my computer seems to be acting up for some reason. I hope it stays that way. You have the decision also to just be passive and to not post anything in your timeline. You can comment on other posts. You wouldn't believe how many contact requests I sometimes get just by posting on other people's posts. I don't do it extensively because at the end of the day, I have 3 teams that I manage. Mustafa can attest to that. And I do a lot of stuff in my free time as well, so I cannot spend the whole day on social media. But just sometimes that strategic post under, a very, very famous account can get you a lot of attention. And also opportunities. Like I randomly connected with people on some very random topics. And then months later, I'm like, oh yeah, I know this person, right? We connect and then we end up having a lunch or, doing a project together or whatnot. So this is really, really good. Don't hold yourself back. Try to do as much as you can in your own time, in your own space, in your own decision framework. So that's really good. Decide for yourself. But then frequency is always good. If you decide to not do a lot, sometimes it just helps to be regular. Maybe just having a post every month or so, just to sort of kind of stay relevant. Frequency is good, and it keeps up your contacts noticing you and your contacts being aware of what you have to offer. And again, another exercise for you. When did you experience the biggest network growth that you've had? And again, it can be a small network, can be a big network. But what was the reason? What was the incident Note down your points and present. And since last time you were very effective with 10 minutes, let's make it 8 minutes. So we will reconvene at 8:12. And then I'm curious to hear your points. Let's move on. I have a couple more slides and then one sort of final exercise for all of you. So we have seen, as you have all shared, sort of the growth that happens. And the good thing is, once you have sort of instant access to network, what happens is that there is a sort of a positive spiral, and you end up having recommendation opportunities or recommending opportunities from that network already. So Maria, you mentioned like, how do I manage all these people? I think the first step is just even looking at increasing. And oftentimes what I find is that once another person joins my network, their network becomes my network at the end of the day. Especially when I get LinkedIn requests, I'm still a person, I still look at every person's CV on LinkedIn who sends me a connection request. Why do I do that? And that maybe taps a bit into your question, because it helps me remember. It helps me have sort of a storyline of, oh, how did I connect to that person? Most of the time, I still remember that, how I connected to that person, because I have sort of this memory spot. But again, I when I look at their profile, I check who's already connected with that person. That's a very, very good indicator, because if I see that we have lots of shared contacts, then likelihood is higher that I will accept the request than not, if there is like no shared connection. And then what happens is, through that growth, people from those networks will come up to you and will connect proactively, either because they meet you in person or because they do see you on LinkedIn or Twitter or something like that. And that's the growth effect that we are seeing, that once you have sort of a core network in place, it will grow exponentially, sometimes even without you doing a lot of things or giving it a lot of input. So as I said, from zero contacts, or you might feel like it's zero contacts, actually nobody of us has just zero contacts, we all have contacts. It goes into sort of different steps and grows into a supportive network. But to have that supportive network, not just network, but supportive network, there is a little bit of magic formula. And that's basically keeping it up. So how do you actually sort of keep up with all the people? How do you make sure that you stay relevant, that you still can remember people's faces, can connect with that, and so forth? And this is what I call, as I said, the network magic. So one of the things that I really, really like to do is following up online and offline. So let's say I did a seminar and I met people. Let's say I started a new job, and just taking a couple of weeks afterwards, just taking some time and just going through the people that I met. Maybe sending them a message, oh, you remember like 5 months ago, we connected on that. How are you? How has it been going? Do I invest a lot of time into that? I wouldn't even say I do. It's just that for me, I take sort of specific incidents or specific events and then try to derive some of the follow-up activities from that. And sometimes it just takes like 20 minutes, half an hour, every couple of months, just to reconnect with people that you want to reconnect with and that you want to remind yourself of. Then what I find also very important is sort of this database or notes effect. As I said, we used to have those wheelie things with the cards in that. Nowadays, you have LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is great because you have a lot of settings that you can manipulate. For example, you can check on LinkedIn to give you notifications about birthdays of people if they have decided to share their birthday with their network. So that's great, because like what happens usually to me is I'm still in bed, I look at my cell phone, and I have notifications on LinkedIn, I click on it, and then sort of in half sleep, oh, this person has birthday today. So I'm still reminded of that person. I can reach out, I can send them a birthday message. Oftentimes when there are job changes, this is indicated. People on Twitter are like, probably Karen, who posted, I left the bullshit job, and then you can be like, great, wow, celebrate together with that person. So do that. Post, comment, encourage them, check in with them on whatever it is that they are currently doing. And that's sort of the last step. What I find really, really effective is the small favors game. Am I a tit-for-tat person? Absolutely not. I do provide help and support wherever I can. But there are instances where I do it very proactively and very strategically. So I reach out to people. Maybe there is a situation where this person needs help in that situation. I reach out, I provide that help, I provide that support. And I just know that there will be one moment in time where I need the other person's help. And there's just a bit of more likelihood that they will help me if there was a sort of a small favor from me in exchange. And it doesn't work, as I said, tit for tat. It doesn't work like I did something for that person, now they're doing something for me. It works more of like a, let's say, sort of a trickle-down effect. If I do something for someone and they can take that away and help another person with that, then it becomes kind of sort of a network effect in itself, right? Then every time I have people coming up to me like, how can I thank you for what you did to me? I heard that like 3 or 4 times in the last month. And I always say, don't specifically do something for me. I mean, if you want to buy me something nice, great, I will probably take it. But that's not the point of it all. The point of it all is that they can go out there and help other people. And if they do that, then I'm already happy, right? And that's the change that we see then reflected in maybe people getting a job or people being networked with each other and so forth. So this is the sort of small network magic. And Maria, I want to get back to your question. My recommendation is really look at every CV if you can. Try to have a story attached to that person. Sometimes when you look at, like, the weirdest things happen. Like I look at a profile picture, I'm like, oh, and then maybe because it looks somehow unusual, and then I'm reminded of how I met that person. Shared experiences is always great. So if you can connect a person to a shared experience that you had, wonderful. And as I said, database and notes. Make notes if you can. And even if it's just like, met that person at the corner of that conference, we chatted about XYZ. Great. Make a note. A lot of CRM systems have that. I haven't yet seen it in LinkedIn to have sort of private notes about a person. Maybe I'm wrong. But that would be a really nice feature. Does anyone know any LinkedIn product people? That would be great. Or Twitter product people, then we could add private notes to profiles. So I would recommend that as well, having sort of a 1 or 2 notes about the person. And also their network. Look at their network. Sometimes the memory spark comes from that. And you're like, yeah, I know. And then they know that other person, which is also, by the way, a great way to open up conversation. It's like, oh, I saw that you like the other person's post. Great for you. You know, you have something in common. You have something that you share. And don't hesitate to reach out proactively, even if it's on the most unusual things. I saw your post recently and I thought it was great. Period. Sometimes that's enough. Just sending like a message, and then they are reminded of you, and then they think very favorably of you in a way. Sometimes we can be too pushy, but I don't believe in that. I think that every time we reach out and we have a nice message, that's actually a really, really good thing. I hope that answers your question a little bit. Do let me know if there's anything else that I didn't answer or that you maybe want the other people to talk about as well.
Actually, I was hoping that you would say, oh, there is a note function in LinkedIn and you can put in your notes, or that you had a CRM that you could suggest, because it's so great to have everything centrally, because if I start writing notes, then I know I'm going to lose them. And yes, maybe, but you're right, this is the only way to write down a few stuff about people you know.
Yeah, the amount of times that I talk to people and I'm like, I know just the person. I know just the person. You just who was it? Like they were the person who did that, like that stuff back then. Let me look it up. And then I just I look up for like weirdest buzzwords, and then I end up finding the person after, let's say, 10 minutes, and like, oh it's that person. Of course it is. Then I network them to each other. And then obviously I don't tell the other person that I didn't remember. I just act like I completely knew the person, like in and out, blah, blah. And it works. It works. Sometimes just having those memory sparks, as I said. I'm thankful that my brain is working so well, because most of the time I do remember names and I do remember instances when I met people. But at the other times it's just like, oh, what was that? What was that? Like, I met them like at the corner at the conference, and we talked about like water coolers, wasn't it? It's just like that.
Yeah, so I don't know, but an archaic idea for that, it will be, for example, last time that I was in this networking women tech, and really for the purpose of this community, one idea for me to remember afterwards is that once the moment that you made the connection, so you write a message and you write in that moment, it was great to see you at that moment, wherever. So in that way, you have like a spot in your memory. And I think that is good. So when you forget, so you see the message and it's good.
That's a really good trick. I go back to the message history. What did I talk about with that person? I once had a DM from a person on Twitter, and he was like, yeah, let's meet up in 3 weeks. And I'm like, oh my God, there's a strange man messaging me and wants to meet up. And I was like, dude, you shouldn't do that on Twitter. Like, that's, the experiences that I have. And it ended up being like we met on a train going from the container days in Hamburg to the main station, and I didn't remember. And I was like, just identify yourself, please. It was hugely embarrassing for me. He's a nice guy. Don't worry. He did not harass me in any shape or form. But he was so understanding. He was like, I know what you women are dealing with, and I can totally understand it. So no worries at all. It was actually ended up being quite funny. So every time I see him on Twitter now, I'm like, oh yeah, he was that guy that I thought was harassing me. So use that to your advantage, right? The only thing is you can only embarrass yourself. That's the only thing that can happen to you. If you're free from feeling embarrassed, then great, go ahead. We're not always perfect. And questions are always good and valid. But yeah, I straight up proceeded to tell him, like, this is not cool. And he was not even in the realm of any like strange stuff and anything like that. Looking at the time, let's move on a little bit. I want to add one last note before we do the final exercise. I've always had the question, or repeatedly, should I sort of separate my private network and my professional network? It still is a question in the year 2020. I would say be open. We live in a time where it sometimes is really tricky to separate the two. Sometimes you end up working together with people in your network. You end up being friends with people in your network. Sometimes you get really deep, genuine friendships out of it. So just being open to the opportunity is like really good. At the same time, be careful about what you share and with who you share. If you are a very open person and you don't mind sharing, great, go for that. But again, there are things that probably should be kept private. More specifically, like decide for yourself which level of sharing you're comfortable with, right? Do you want to share about maybe challenging times at work? Some people are very cool with that, others are not. Do you want to share about projects that you're working on but that are not yet final? Some people say, okay, it's great that I document the journey with my network, and then they can already respond to that and we can create synergy together. Sometimes it just does make sense. So listen to yourself, reflect on that, and go with what is the most comfortable for you at the end of the day. There is no general recommendation. Whatever is the best way forward for you, and you can change that anytime, do it. So I wanted to have this exercise where we have sort of smaller groups to try it out ourselves by introducing yourselves, obviously, which you have already done, naming the channels you are active on, the 3 most valuable skills, competencies, and offers that you have, identifying sort of a common topic and interest in the smaller group, and also saying if you were able to do a project together, and if so, what would it be? Since we're a very small group and we don't have any breakout rooms, why don't we try to do, let's say, the second half of 1 and 2 in the larger round? And then I will listen very closely and try to find a common topic or interest. So name the channels that you're active on and name 3 most valuable skills, competencies, or offers that you have. But from what I've taken away, I've taken some notes while we were doing that. Maybe I can add my perspective here as well before we delve into sort of, could we do a project together? I use LinkedIn and Twitter extensively, like really extensively. I am on Xing, I am on Facebook, but I don't use those too much any longer. I am an avid YouTube user and hopefully soon also content producer. Meetup, yes, I use Meetup as well. Telegram only for private chats though. And my 3 offers, probably coaching. I do coaching really well. I love connecting people to each other. And I'm just a kick-ass writer and communicator. So from what I take away, sort of the product that I think we could all do together, and please correct me if I'm wrong, would be to have a portal or app for scientists for data analysis.
That would be super cool.
That's the common ground for us. We have software engineers, UX experts on the team, product experts on the team, who can sort of do the product side. We've also had consultants, so you would be able to take that maybe to communicate with investors and do sort of the client rota. We have people who have scientific networks, so the user access is already guaranteed. We can do user research there. We have data analysis specialists. We have people who like to teach, who like to learn. So these are the things that I took away, and this is what I proposed. So who's writing their business proposal now?
It's amazing.
Yeah,
This is
very
actually
nice.
an idea I had some time ago, because scientific labs, they have so much data lying around, and oftentimes they don't have the people or expertise to handle this, and maybe some poor PhD student has to learn from scratch. But you could also outsource this.
Absolutely. So basically, that was it from my side. I have not much more to add. Probably I do have a lot to add, but it would probably take 5 or 10 hours, and we don't have that time. So I can only leave you with the thought that try yourself out. Don't hesitate to make mistakes. You know how many times I looked stupid up on a stage or, in an exchange. And I don't care. I don't care about that, because it's at the end of the day, it's about the synergies that we create and the great people and their stories. Just meeting people that have overcome so many obstacles, learning from them, taking away the best thing, benchmarking in a way. That's really fulfilling. And again, it doesn't matter if you have 100 people in your network or 50,000. It depends on what you do with that. That's the most important thing. And these are the thoughts that I want to leave you with. As you have gotten to know me, I'm available on all the channels. My DMs are open, so don't hesitate to exchange and to send me maybe a follow-up message to this meetup. And don't hesitate to connect to each other. Note down the names, connect on LinkedIn, do follow-ups, and try to stay connected. That's it for me. And if there are any more questions, I'd be happy to.